Human body is really amazing. We already learnt in grade 10 and grade 11 that we have various systems in the body. We've got the reproduction system, and we've got the breathing system, the digestive system, excretory system, nervous system, and all of these work together harmoniously. And the body actually does not like change. Homeostasis. Now, homeostasis is really the body's way of maintaining a stable internal environment. So despite all these different things going on in the body, homeostasis is going to try and keep everything in balance so that nothing goes out of control. And in this video specifically, we're going to look at the control of blood glucose levels. Now, in grade 10, we also learned about the pancreas as part of the digestive system, that the pancreas actually makes digestive enzymes, which goes into the small intestine and then digests your food. But yeah, we are now going to learn about the islets of Langerhans, which are groups of cells found in the pancreas. And these islets of Langerhans, in these islets of Langerhans, these little groups of cells, we find alpha cells and beta cells. Now, the alpha cells, highlighted in green here, the little blue circles, are groups of cells that will produce a hormone called glucagon. The yellow groups of cells, the islets of Langerhans, contain beta cells, and they are responsible for making insulin. Now, insulin and glucagon are the two hormones that is going to control the blood glucose levels within the body. So let's start by looking at what happens when you eat a meal. Now, we already know from grade 10 that when you eat, your food goes into your stomach, which means we're going to find the food, okay, right there. That's when we find the food, or when we've eaten it. It goes into your stomach. That's simple enough. From there, the food then gets digested into the intestine. So the food is going to go into the intestines, and it will be digested there by enzymes, and then the nutrients, like glucose specifically, will be absorbed into the bloodstream. That means the blood glucose levels are going to increase the moment you've had a meal. When the blood glucose gets too high, this is detected by the pancreas. And in the pancreas, the beta cells within the islets of Langerhans secretes insulin. And insulin will lower the blood glucose level. Insulin is going to lower the blood glucose level by doing three things, and this is pretty important. The first thing that insulin does is it's going to facilitate the increased rate of glucose being absorbed into the bloodstream. Out of the bloodstream. So if the glucose is found here, this is the bloodstream, here we go, in a blood vessel, the glucose is going to move out of the bloodstream. In other words, if this represents the bloodstream and these are the cells, glucose is going to move from the blood into the cells at a faster rate. The second thing that's going to happen is that within the cells, we're going to have cellular respiration happening, but insulin is going to cause the respiration that is happening inside the cells there to actually speed up. And then thirdly, inside the cells here, the excess glucose is going to be converted into glycogen, and glycogen is the form in which glucose gets stored in both the muscles and in the liver. Now, so what happens then when the blood glucose levels drop is that it's again going to be detected by the pancreas. The pancreas is going to detect that there's too little blood glucose. And in this case, the alpha cells within the islets of Langerhans secretes a second hormone called glucagon. And glucagon's responsibility is then to increase the blood glucose levels. So what happens there? Now, how it does that is that the glucagon is going to raise the blood glucose level by doing two things. First of all, it's going to take the glycogen that was stored inside the cells here. Inside these cells, remember, previously, we stored excess glucose in the form of glycogen. So now, that excess glycogen, when we need it, that glycogen is going to be converted back into glucose. Secondly, though that glucose is then going to be released from the muscles and the liver back into the bloodstream. So it's going to go back into the bloodstream so that the glucose can now travel everywhere in the body where it is needed. There is a negative feedback mechanism that exists between the hormones insulin and glucagon. Now, insulin and glucagon work antagonistically, which means they work opposite. Between insulin and glucagon, there's this feedback loop that keeps the blood glucose levels within a very narrow range. Now, antagonistically means this. When the blood glucose levels are too high, insulin is going to be released to lower it, while when the levels of blood glucose are too low, glucagon is going to be released to raise it.
So this is a very important chapter, and usually in an exam, it's in every exam, the question would be worded this way. Explain how blood glucose levels are controlled by negative feedback during homeostasis. So for those of you that are picture people, I'm going to put this up on Schoology as well. Shows you exactly that when you eat, insulin, highlighted in yellow here, will bond to insulin receptors on the cell, and the insulin allows the glucose from the blood to go into the cell faster, then to be respirated faster, and then to either be, if it's not respirated, it's going to be changed into glycogen and stored that way. Where glucagon on the other hand, if you don't have enough glucose, it's going to do it the other way around. It's going to take the stored glycogen and convert it back into glucose. So have a look at this diagram. It basically summarizes everything that we've learned so far. Glucose levels too high, insulin is released, increasing absorption of glucose, increasing the rate of respiration, and converting glucose to glycogen. There's the three things that happen, numbered number 1, 2, and 3 on this diagram. When the levels of glucose is too low, I always remember when glucose is gone, glucagon is secreted. And it's going to convert glycogen into glucose and move it back into the cells. There's those 2 points. When there's not enough glucose, glucagon is going to convert glucose back into glucose, seeing this happen in green there, and then number 2, moving it into the bloodstream. So if you are making summaries, this page summarizes the entire video as well as this diagram. The 2 very last things that you need to know is what goes wrong. Now obviously, sometimes there's a problem with the control in blood sugar levels, and then you find these 2 conditions, diabetes type 1 and diabetes type 2. Diabetes type 1 is when the body is not creating any insulin or too little. That means there's something wrong with the pancreas. So it's usually caused by loss of insulin producing beta cells, or a person is just not born with beta cells. Something is going on and your pancreas is not making insulin. Then what you need to do is this device on the right hand side is the easy way to do it. But you might have seen people, they take a finger prick to test their blood glucose levels. And this is what this device will do. In there is a little needle. It pricks and tests how much glucose is in the bloodstream, and the reading is given on the little screen there. And according to what the blood glucose levels are, this diabetic person will then have to inject themselves, usually in the stomach, with liquid insulin. because your body with diabetes type 1 is not making insulin or not making enough, you will have to inject yourself. Okay, the second type of diabetes is type 2. This is when there's nothing wrong with your pancreas. Your body is still actually making insulin, but your cells cannot effectively use it. We call this term insulin resistance. So if we just look back for a second at this diagram, if you do make insulin, let's say your body is making insulin. On this diagram, you can see these three little yellow blocks. The insulin is supposed to bond to the cell at these three places to what we call insulin receptors. Now, obviously, there's not just three, there's plenty all around the cell wall, but cell membrane, sorry. But the insulin receptors, if they go on strike, your body can be making lots of insulin, but the insulin is not bonding to the cell, which means the insulin can't do its job. The cell resists the plan that the insulin has, which means insulin can't do its job. You can't absorb glucose, you can't increase the rate of respiration, you can't convert it to glycogen either, because the insulin receptors aren't working. So for type 2, again, just remember your body does produce insulin, but the cells cannot use it effectively. We call this insulin resistance, and this is diabetes type 2. All of the best.